Yes, guys, welcome back to the Cannon podcast. How are you all? I hope you're doing very, very well. We were going to record this podcast yesterday. George was unwell. Are you feeling better?
I'm feeling like better, but I don't know if anybody's got like a flu and you're like day two and you just feel like you have a frog in your throat and it's just like scratchy and it's kind of like one of those things. But yeah, no,
So
I totally missed yesterday, like game completely. I just it was not a good day.
was probably a good one to miss. To be honest, if you were going to miss one, I was kind of jealous of you a little bit. George texted me like, "Dude, I'm so sorry. I'm really unwell." I was like, "Mate, honestly, probably the day to miss. Probably the day to miss." We're here to unpack it all. Thank you all for being here. Appreciate it. If you are watching us on YouTube, make sure you like and subscribe, etc., etc. If you're listening to us on Spotify, etc., make sure you subscribe. But we're just going to get into it. Yeah. We were just talking off air, and I think maybe a good place to start is about this thing of like, it feels like until we close the gap, I think like most pods where we have dropped points are going to feel like a little bit like a post-mortem. Do you know what I mean? Because it feels kind of so high stakes so soon. So I don't want it to like take a negative tone the whole way through. I think there's positives from yesterday, but I think we do need to get into it. We do need to talk about the draw, obviously at Fulham, and sort of looking ahead to what can shift and stuff. And maybe a good place to start is kind of the overall picture of the game. I don't know how you feel, but I think what I've come to conclude over the last like sort of day or so is it feels like there's two fundamental issues, and I think I'm kind of at a point now where I am done with us not being able to transition as a team. Like I am done. At some point in this pod, we're gonna get onto January and stuff, but I think like Fulham away this season will come as my line in the sand of where I was like, we have to learn to transition as a team. So that's point one. I want to get into that more specifically. Point two, our left-hand side. I do want to come onto that and how it's like, how it's constructed. Like we need to get into this. I think that's another fundamental issue with the team. But yeah, I suppose watching it, knowing the result, watching it with kind of clearer eyes, just starting with your overall thoughts.
um, it's a little bit of frustration, I feel, because even before watching the game and knowing the result, I had a look at the starting lineup and said, "This won't work. This won't. This won't do well." And we've seen this story over and over and over again, and it has to do with balance. I hate to keep repeating some of the things that I've talked about, but I really feel as though Mikel is one of those people that is a genius. So I'm not going to sit here in an attempt to say that I know more, but I've met a lot of those types of people that are incredibly smart, and what does them a lot of times are some very simple things. And I think that sometimes when we look at it, I think we've seen some of the similar patterns and we need to at some point address them. And one of my biggest frustrations is I don't think that Kel does a great job about implementing a plan B when plan A doesn't work well. I think he always gets there, but the timeline to which he does apply the correct changes varies. And at various points, it's let us down in terms of our pursuits for achievements. But equally, he's also put us in a position to even be in the conversation of achievements. So you can't sit there and say it's all criticism and it's all praise. It's somewhere in the middle. And I'll be very specific, not be cryptic, but having three right-footed players on the left-hand side, having Thomas Partey, Jorginho, Declan Rice have three DMs against a compact mid-block. I'm sorry, like, mate, like, what do we expect is going to happen? Where's the effective width? And we need to get out of this mentality as fans of just saying, okay, I know where people stand. It's evolved. It's beyond that. It's about creating dynamism and dynamic running, and not just asking, okay, the front line's missing a runner. I just want you to run. It's a little bit more complicated than that. And like everybody is doing the same things. And I just feel as though when you have such a dominant right-footed presence on the left-hand side that's funneling play into the center of the pitch, then you've got three DMs effectively. Once again, another flat midfield performance. It funnels play into the center of the park that's already well defended. I mean, when you beat a mid block, I'm not even talking Arsenal right now. If I'm a coach and I'm saying, okay, I'm going to carry out a mid-block game plan, what am I going to try to do? There's three major things that I tell my team. We need to have a strong-footed overlap that's providing effective width on either side. I don't care who that is. On the left, there needs to be a left-footed player giving me some width, arriving in space. Same thing on the right. From the right, by the way, we didn't have that with Thomas Partey. Not only did we kill our left-hand side dynamics, but we killed our right-hand side dynamics as well. So with Partey there's no one on the outside on the right-hand side. On the left, same thing. We know there was not a single left-footed player there. So the left-hand side didn't touch the ball. Some of that could be injury-focused. Why is Marino not starting? I think that guess is as good as anybody's. I don't understand. He looks good when he plays. He adds more zone 14 touches. If you're going to tell me that the left backs were all injured, I'll accept it. But then why isn't Marino playing? Why are we introducing Jorginho into the midfield while still having Declan Rice and Thomas Partey being forced at right back? You've got control. Why are we doing that? Simple thing to fix. I think we need to have a minimum of two players either side of the pitch that are comfortable going in and out. What I mean by that is at times, Bukayo Saka is a unicorn. That's brilliant on the right, isn't it? Odegaard isn't somebody that loves to go on the outside. So typically we need to manufacture space in order to do that. He either drops out of the block, we have a timber underlap, we either have Kai Havertz that likes to cheat on the right-hand side. We have a plethora of options for providing something on the outside to Bukayo Saka on the right-hand side. I want to count how many connections do we do that on the left. I can only count one. And that's consistently the left winger that's held out wide. That's a problem for me. And then lastly, the tempo of pass, which I actually thought was a lot better against Fulham, generally speaking. I actually thought tempo wasn't a huge issue, but it is an issue against mid-blocks. And it's something that we have struggled in the past not to do. So from my perspective, again, this setup, the first and the second points weren't adhered to as basic principles. And then you're sitting there and you're still missing rude chances because, mate, at the end of the day, even at 1-1, I count 2 open goal misses. Thomas Partey, again, an open goal miss. I don't care if it's from a set piece, but if you guys watch that back, I watched it back without the emotion. I was screaming. It was unacceptable. And then Declan Rice, who, by the way, I get told all the time has no passing from deep midfield ability, drops it on a pin for Gabriel Jesus to finish in the box, who doesn't gamble. It's ridiculous. And I mean, even in the second halves, you know, Declan Rice does a brilliant through ball out to Kai Havertz from deep midfield that breaks 3 or 4 lines. And unfortunately, Kai's unable to put it under control, who, by the way, hate to break it, he's got credit in the bank, but he's been poor. And he was not a reference kind of all game. Our center forward wasn't able to bring people inside whatsoever throughout the entirety of the match. So you're left with a team that's predictable, attacking through the same areas, unable to create any space in the middle of the park because they've got an entire left-hand side that's funneling play into there. You've got no width on the right. And it's a recipe for frustration for all the territory that you get. There's no one that's going to be stretching and creating space. So I was frustrated. I watch the match. I sit there and I'm screaming for it. And I find that the substitutions that we made with 10 minutes left, we showed a little bit of something, but mate, it's far too late. Like, those are substitutions that we could have employed a lot sooner. Heck, we could have started with some of those substitutions, namely the Marino one.
Anyone want to hear a joke? Or because it does. It's funny because, like, well, I don't disagree with anything you said, George. We're 6 points behind Liverpool, and for some reason that game, why does that game feel so bad? That bruise hasn't really sort of healed. I think it's because it's a lot of the issues that we've seen before. It's a lot of the stuff that we've seen before against mid blocks in these types of situations. It doesn't feel like we've moved past games like Aston Villa, games like Porto last season. Only going to add a couple more things tactically, and then I want to move on to other stuff. I think the transition thing is a big problem for me. Odegaard isn't that player who can run downhill, as we've spoken before. He can't create those central transitions. There is a profile issue, But I want to focus on the mentality of it. There's a number of situations, and I'm putting this in a main channel video for the different knock if you want to check that out. There's a number of situations where it is actually about how we respond to the ball dropping to us. And there's like 5 or 6 that I counted where someone wins it back and there's an easy 5v4 or there's an easy 6v4 in our favor. We just don't take it. We don't take it. We always go back to slow control. And when, it's the classic thing, you can go through round or over teams. Fulham were incredibly compact. And when you have that and you have a moment where, oh my God, this team's actually spread out a little bit, and we don't punish that, my God, I was like, guys, please, especially when going round and over just wasn't happening. When we did go over, we were executing so poorly. Let's come on to the left, sort of maybe later. Let's come to a question, because there'll be loads of questions about the left and stuff. I don't want to spend too long on the tactical aspect right now. But the frustration, I suppose, is with the feeling that we've been in this situation before, and we're doing kind of the same thing again. And actually, like with the balance thing, the Lewis Skelly and there was a way of doing that. And I think I said this on the instant reaction. I can't remember, to be honest. I just solo monologued for half an hour, so I've probably said loads of things. But if you're going to have someone in your squad, right? Okay, we've had this. I think we have like a 25% win percentage with Partey at right back. It's like the numbers are crazy. It's not working. Why blow up an entire functioning side just because basically you don't want to put Lewis Skelly in? If you don't, and we've had the same conversation about Waneri. If you don't trust Lewis Skelly, sorry, let me put it this way. If you think Lewis Skelly and Waneri are good enough to play for the first team, that's fine. And you don't think we need another sign, we don't need another creative signing because we don't want to block Waneri's pathway. I'm on board. Mate, if this Haylender is going to come out and save it, you will find no one happier than me. But then you have to use them. You have to, especially in games like Fulham. Fulham are a brilliantly coached side, but individual talent-wise, they're not going to win the league. They're okay. They're decent. Wobie, Traore, Nelson, whatever, Smith Rowe, very, very good players, but we're not talking about Salah here, right? If you have them in your squad and you're not using them, and using them would fix a very clear issue that we've had before with balance on both sides in terms of putting strong footers on the right side. Again, as you mentioned with Mourinho, I don't understand that. It really irks me. And I suppose really the thing I'm getting at here, George, is this has happened before. So like if we were talking about a new issue, it would feel like, oh, okay, we've got to solve this problem. But I think that's why it feels like a loss. And also the way it happened with the disallowed goal at the end. But yeah, just your thoughts on kind of, the word stubborn gets thrown around and not changing or whatever. But like how Mikel approaches this, because I can't understand. I don't understand what it is. He's seen the issue before. He's fixed it before. He has the solution in his squad and he doesn't use it. I don't get it.
It's kind of like when you're tutoring the student, that you've gone through a problem together with an example and he's able to do it, and then you just go to the homework question. He's unable to apply what you've done. And it's very much that case. And I think when you have a look at, for me, this Arsenal team, I've said it before, fullback, people don't want to hear it. It's the crux of our team. People keep highlighting Odegaard and Saka. I have a very different opinion. Fullback is the point of failure for me in this team. And there's very simple principles that I believe you, as a coach and as an Arsenal team, need to adhere by. Mate, if we just look at the profile of Yuri and Timber as well as Thomas Partey, let's ignore some of the defensive issues. Those are two players that primarily would play in the middle third, right? There's not a single overlapping dynamic there.
No.
You can't do that. You can't, for example, even when people are saying, well, what about strong-footed, inverted fullbacks? So let's have Yuri and Timber and Calafiori. Why does that work? And why does what we see not work? Well, A, you've got strong-footed players on their same sides. That's a balance thing. And B, Calafiori is somebody that operates on the outside. It is somebody that can do that. When you've got two players that don't do that, it makes your build-up predictable. It makes where you're going to go in the middle of the pitch predictable. Problem one. Problem two, by not having an effective overlap, you are isolating your wingers because you are not having somebody go on the outside. And I don't care if that comes from midfield, by the way. It can come from fullback. I don't care. But not having a single player willing to do that is a problem. And we've seemed to have done that on the right-hand side effectively with different people. And I'm kind of with you where if you're telling me injuries forced this left-hand side selection, I can get on board with it. Still don't agree with you because Marino is there, but I'll play. I'll play ball. Why would you then get rid of the one functioning side that has worked in terms of the right with Timber down that side? And
this is my Lewis Skelly point. It's like if you have that, but you don't, and the reason you're doing it is because you don't trust Lewis Skelly, I don't want him in the squad. Like, do you know what I mean? If he's taking up one of our squad roles, I'm okay with that, but you have to use him when he's needed.
I do think, mate, like we have to have a real conversation about depth because you're looking at Miles Lewis Skelly, Zinchenko, Kieran Tierney. Those are all three people in the 11. If we had one functioning left back, we could have done something else. I still maintain, I don't know why Kieran Tierney hasn't been integrated back. He could leave tomorrow. And I made this point. I don't care. He's useful. He helps. He solves a problem that we currently have. Play the solution that's in your squad and think about it, mate. Like, okay, if you want to invert Jurrien Timber from right back, who is the best overlapping left back that's in the squad that's not Calafiori? I'm sorry, mate. It's Kieran Tierney. It's that simple. It has nothing to do with me loving Kieran Tierney or selecting a player. It's simply for balance. And that's not something that I feel that we respect. Every time that you suggest individual players, I think people think that you're part of some squad that like loves that player, or there's the Odegaard wars, or there's a certain war amongst fan bases. No, for me, it's really quite simple. I need an inverted fullback and an overlapping fullback to make this work. I need to have effective width carrying on both sides of the pitch. If I know on the right, I've got Kai Havertz that likes to cheat there, Odegaard, Jurrien Timber, I've got players that like to cheat on the right. Cool, I don't have to worry about it. I go to the left and I'm saying, okay, who's cheating on the left? Nobody. And again, it's not even a Martinelli debate. It's just how do I connect the team properly? And if I'm constantly connecting one side of the pitch, you become predictable. And that for me is an issue. And it becomes easy to defend against. And I'm sorry, Thomas Tuchel actually did a brilliant thing against Bayern last year in terms of a post-match conference. And he laid the blueprint about how to beat Arsenal that everybody has followed, by the way, since. In terms of Arsenal like to switch out to the right very quickly and then come inside to then switch back to the left. He was talking about how we typically like to set off with Bukayo Saka to break and transition teams. You stop that transition, you stop Arsenal. And he's not wrong. And it's because we constantly have a predictable way of breaking. And if we have two sides of the pitch that open up, like, I don't know about you, mate, but did you count how many attacks came after Mikel Martinelli came on the pitch? It all went through the left. And Ethan Waneri didn't even touch the ball. Now, that is a big problem over 90 minutes, but at least we got some left-hand side connection. But the point is, why does it always have to be one side connected, one side disconnected? I don't agree that we need to do that.
And my frustration, just to go back to it, I'm not sat here thinking me and you on a podcast know this and Mikel doesn't. Like, of course he does. So I suppose our job, if you want to call it a job, as fans, is to work out like what is he trying to do? What's the aim here? And I the only answer I really have is deferring to seniority, and I wonder whether that's like a longer term issue that we do need to look at. Even in the likes and sort of deferring to what he knows. People like the signings of Raheem Sterling and deferring to Partey at right back and deferring to Timber and deferring to what he knows over what sort of seems to make sense, and that is a long term issue I see with Mikel. Look, we've spent a lot of this pod berating the team, and maybe rightly so. But I'm looking at the numbers for Fulham, and I think this is another aspect of it, George, isn't it? We're so good at so many things. If you, I say this all the time, but if you're listening to this pod, if you write a list of everything you could, if you're going in to coach Arsenal tomorrow, What could you work on? You could work on pattern play. You could work on build up. You could work on counter press. You could work on pressing. You could work on corners. If you wrote a list, it's pretty much tick, 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 tick with Arsenal, and it just feels like there's like just a few things which is making it even more frustrating. And then when you look at the numbers, a lot of this is set pieces, and we can come to that in a second. But two expected goals to 0.1. They had 2 shots on target. One of them was their goal, their first shot on target. We dominated on possession. We had double their passes. We had 86% of the field tilt. We had triple their final third entries. We had triple their expected threat created. They had 1 touch in zone 14. One. Their PPDA was 80.3. And I suppose this is the real frustration, isn't it? And I kind of want to come on to what you think is Mikel's thinking, because I don't get it. We can see the mechanics. We can see the mechanics aren't working. We feel like, at least from our perspective, we've resolved what the problem is. Why won't he implement the solution?
I think part of it comes down to control and his idea of that. And his bet that you control the match for 95% of it, 99.9% of the time you win the match. And it's a game of probabilities. And I think he's thinking, well, my process worked. This was moments. And I'm sitting there saying, well, I don't quite agree, because maybe in this isolated game, you might be correct, but there's a pattern going on here that's been going on for over a year against this exact type of team. And this exact type of performance is something that we've seen. And I think that's part of maybe where the frustration from fans come in, because we feel like we've seen this story before. And this idea that, you mentioned that there's only 1 or 2 things we need to fix. I think that could be something that you could talk about from an Arsenal perspective since 2005 in terms of. And so
yeah, it's so true.
So there's some of that like anger that spills over. You know what I mean? Like objectively, yes, we're very close. Objectively, yes,
we haven't replaced Patrick Vieira. It's literally that.
And it comes down to those types of things. Look, the one thing I'll say is, from a Fulham perspective in this performance, our mid-block performance in this game, whilst the result is incredibly frustrating, and the lineup, for me, I still maintain, you swap personnel, we win this by a clear margin. I think our actual play was a lot better than what people will want. It's just the result has clouded it.
Agree. Second half especially.
Yeah.
And also, sorry to cut you off, but I always feel in these situations, we are having a very, very, very different conversation. You and I would have a conversation about the issues, but most Arsenal fans would probably go away saying, if that goal goes in, that's the performance of champions. That's a title-winning team. It's 4 in a row. Liverpool. We're coming after you. Whatever, that sort of stuff. And it literally is separated by half a foot.
Yeah,
it's half a foot. And I'm not having any of this smart. Like people will go offside. I'm not having that critique.
Can I ask you, why isn't Timber getting more criticism for not releasing it earlier? And it's Martinelli that's got it.
Anyway, but yeah, people need a scapegoat. But I just. It just feels this season, I suppose this is a wider conversation, it does feel to me, and maybe this is kind of the shape of the race, I don't know, any hairline crack, done. And this league is brutal. Anything, literally 20 minutes where you don't have your left side on, boom, you can see down that side. One game without Gabriel and Calafiori, or whatever it is, and we've conceded down that side with 2 games. Sorry, we conceded down that side with Jimenez and Salah. You almost get away with it at the Etihad, final moment of the game. You get a brand new midfield signing, boom, first training session. It just feels like fixtures, whatever. I don't want to play the poor us card, because there are absolutely, as we've spent 20 minutes discussing, things that we can do better. I'm not saying that at all. But equally, there is another aspect of me, and the kind of the fan in me going, it's not fair. It does feel that way this season. And I don't know how you feel about that, because it just feels like, and again, bringing this onto the kind of the title race, is this a season where everyone's brilliant and it's a case of, can you deal with your flaws, therefore making these discussions that we're having about balance and about the left-hand side, which we'll come to, and all that sort of stuff, much more important, because these are you are gonna get punished. You are going to get punished, and maybe you could get away with it before. I don't know how to quite sort of put that sort of package that, but you know what I mean? It's like any tiny thing is getting killed at the moment.
I think part of it is if we had this exact same season start last year, we wouldn't feel this trepidation. Actually, and I really don't think that there'd be this toxicity in terms of the fan base. There's an acceptance that this process has reached its finish line and that he's been given the time, the resources to demand success. And I think I can understand the sentiment, but I find it really entitled in general. And fundamentally, I felt like this league has been so good. And I maintain what I said at the start of preseason. I feel like there would be a lower points total, kind of what we talked about last pod. Everybody has an issue in the middle third. Who is going to be the most consistent at dealing with that flaw? And then a lot of people are going to sit there and retort to you, well, Mikel Arteta has been in a job for over 5 years. He should know, or at least be best placed to deal with those inconsistencies over people that have just come in Maresca, in, Arne Slot. And, other people are going to sit there, we'll look at the great Pep Guardiola, who's so great and still hasn't won a game since October 26th.
Mm-hmm.
Even he, the great manager, can sometimes not find a solution. And you're left in this like cesspool of he said, she said, and everyone's just basically frustrated that we aren't in a position that we expected. That's what it boils down to. And whether you want to blame...
But is anyone?
Well, I mean, I think if you're a Liverpool fan, you're being...
But both ways is what I mean. Chelsea and Liverpool probably feel like they're overperforming. Aston Villa feel like they're under. City feel like they're under. I don't think anyone feels we're at par.
No, and well, part of that also is that you're talking about half a season still yet to be played. More than half, 60%.
2/3 basically.
Yeah. And again, I do think like some of this has to come down to people expect the title. I actually can't get away from this conclusion. Like, if Arsenal don't win, it's going to be a bigger story than Arne Slot winning it, and that will overshadow quite a bit.
To us, yeah.
Yes, but I think even in the media, right? Like when we're talking, for example, this set piece thing for me has gotten a little bit out of hand. When I have a look at it, our open play XG has dropped from 1.6 to 1.2. Let me put that into perspective because people say, "Oh, look, it's dropped." That is 0.4 of an XG. That means on average, you're dropping per match less than half a chance. Now, it's not great. I'd rather we be ahead. But to act like this is the point of difference to scoring an extra 10 to 15 goals across the season is just factually not true. It works out to an extra 15, 12 chances over a season. So you're maybe saying you can convert 30% of those, which is which is what Mohamed Salah is scoring a rate at. You're basically talking the difference between 3 and 4 goals. And I don't think our issues stem to 3 or 4 goals.
No, I don't think so. And I think if you look at Mark's stats, I was looking at it earlier, our XG difference is 11v11, crucially, is second best in the league. Our XG against 11v11 is the best in the league.
Mm-hmm.
Like, we're this idea where I think we're like 0.2 off, we're exactly 0.2 off Liverpool XG wise per 90, 11v11. So this idea that we're miles and miles and miles behind XG wise, I don't particularly buy. As you say, we're still dealing with small samples, but I guess that's what it is. And you kind of said it earlier. It's a perfect way of summing it up. It's exactly how everyone's felt since like 2006. So it's like the nearly men every time, and we just don't want to have that again. And one of the ways, George, we can solve that is January. I think not only was yesterday when we're recording this Sunday, the day that I went, we need transition in this team. It was the day where I was like, I for my mental health, I'll go that far, Arsenal. I need us to make a signing in January. As I say, we'll come on to the left-hand side in a second. So, but about our issues with it. But maybe this will come up in this discussion. Some kind of attacking signing. If prime Sadio Mane was around, I would be licking my lips and I'd be paying you whatever. But we have to start looking at January. We have to start talking about January. I think it has to be an attacking signing. and it feels like somewhere on the center or the center left of our team is the crux of it. It feels like adding running power is a huge part of it, and it feels like adding pace is a big part of it. Pace is kind of slipping down my list a little bit, but yeah, where are you at with January? Because I think just from a deal perspective, and I know it's always, it's going to be difficult to do stuff in January, whatever. Honestly, I don't want to sound like one of those fans, but I sort of don't care. It's difficult. It's difficult to do anything good. Like, if you need to do something, it's very obvious that we need to do something. We absolutely okay, put it this way. We have issues in our team. We have them. We that's not going to change. And they are profile issues, fundamentally, I think, right? And how we play. If that has to happen in the summer, why won't we spend the extra money to do that in January? Knowing that we're in a good position on PSR, and know we are. No, we haven't spent crazy money in the last 12 months. I don't know, man. I think we've got to do something.
The only thing I'll say is that from an Arsenal perspective, I think people forget this. Arsenal aren't afraid to spend in January. We have a history of actually doing
true.
In terms of Aubameyang, in terms of the year before, us spending £60 million.
Bro, Jorginho, Kivior, and Trossard in one January window under Arteta.
Yeah, that's what I mean. £60 million spent there. Like, Arsenal have a history of doing it in January. So it's actually one of the few teams that make use of the January transfer window more than others. And you could say some of that was to fix mistakes that we didn't address, but I think we're kind of in that position at this point. Look,
George, give us names. Give us some copium, please.
I do. I have names.
You're the names man.
Look, there's a player for me, Antoine Semenyo, I think is an absolutely brilliant winger. It is exactly everything we need. He's an Arsenal fan, can play both sides of the pitch, has some really good transition power. You can't shake him. Excellent ball striking off both feet, and can ghost in behind the back post. That's a player that I feel, okay, they're at Bournemouth, but I'm sitting there saying, if you tell me that you can't pull an Arsenal fan in January, who would be what? Even at the most, £50 million, that is worth it.
Yep.
And
24 years old.
Yeah. Brilliant prime age player, knows the league, and it hits every box for me. That's one. I hate to keep boring people. I'm going to keep saying this name because I still have yet to hear of a valid argument beyond there being this weird attitude potential. But Victor Osimhen, at £63 million as a release clause, who knows he wants to leave, has physically inserted a clause to leave. And we know it's £63 million. I'm sorry, mate. I'm going to demand answers why that's not being done. We can sit here and we can debate about striker. Is it the top position that we need? But if you're talking about a difference-making signing that can move people in the box, give us something different, give an injection. By the way, I think this team needs an injection, not just the fans. Yeah. There needs to be something new. And if you're going to sit there and tell me that attitude-wise is the reason that you're afraid, I'm sorry, we need a bit of an asshole. We're too nice. And we need a bit of that.
I completely
agree. Mikel needs to show that he can coach that. So those are your two opposite ends of the spectrum for me. From a winger and a striker. From the nice guy, that is such an Arsenal signing, you can get Semenyo. Or we can actually sit there and maybe try to have a little bit of ambition for me. And sit there and try to do something that's maybe not Arsenal-like, which is what I think we need attitude-wise to win the league.
Yeah, I really like both of those names. I think we have to do something, and I'm at a point where I think what you said about the injection is absolutely bang on. I said this about Rashford, and I'm not suggesting Rashford. I think that ship sailed, but although I do maintain yesterday he would have helped us anyway. The point with him was the attitude concerns. Say you could get past the on pitch concerns on the pitch, right? If one bad apple ruins the culture, it's not a good culture. A good culture brings everyone up because there's a baseline of something good. And as you say, you need someone who is a bit of a maverick, who's a bit of a difference maker. Arteta, I don't know if you saw it, but after the midweek game, he said on Amazon, he said basically said we need more moments in the team. So he knows. He has said that. He's mentioned, as we banged on about all bloody summer, George, he said about box efficiency, and he's now specifically said about moments. And you can read between the lines there. And I think at some point you have to start looking up. I'm not sure it is necessarily an Arteta thing. I think it is a bit of a sustainability or whatever. Are we spending that kind of money on a player? Could we get him for cheaper in the summer? Actually, in this league at this moment, it kind of doesn't matter. If you want to do it, we can't be in that point again. If we go and sign that player, I think most Arsenal fans would obviously be disappointed, but long term would probably be like, well, we did something. We did try and do that. We went ahead and did something in January. If we don't and we fall away, I think there will be a much bigger frustration, because it does feel like that. It's just that last couple of percentages, which is making it all the more frustrating.
What's worse?
Yeah.
You never talking to that girl at the bar that's really cute and saying it's never going to happen, or shooting your shot and getting rejected. What's the worst that can happen? You left without a number? What's the worst that can happen?
Yep.
We left without getting the title that we tried to do.
Yeah,
you go again.
Well, at least we tried, because otherwise, what's the point?
Otherwise, stay at home, mate, and don't go out to the bar. And I'm sorry, if that's the attitude that you're going to have towards getting a title or getting the girl, you're never going to get the girl, and you're never going to get the trophy. So you got to put yourself out there.
Ask for Victor's number, man. Yeah, absolutely. No, 100%. And yeah, I think again, we've said this so many times this summer, but it bears repeating. There's no perfect player. There is literally no perfect player. So any player that gets mentioned, what happens is you get an immediate, this is bro. There's no one who is going to have no cons. So you have to pick your cons. So I think everyone needs to. You do what you want, but I think we need to come forward with, look, this player. There are some issues, of course there are, but we pick those issues and what Osimhen could solve, what a Semenyo could solve. What, I know personally I'm bigger on him than you are, but someone like a Leao, I do think we can work on that and the separation and stuff. I want to come to the left-hand side because I think that's kind of leading us to there. But let's come to questions, because there's loads of questions and other stuff that's going to be sort of dealt with in that process. So let's come to those. Starting on the Discord. If you do enjoy the kind of podcast, if you enjoy our chats about Arsenal, then you can support us on Patreon, or you can support us on YouTube memberships, and you get extra free content, ad-free content and stuff. So yeah, go for it. Alejandro on the Discord says, Alejandro says, why doesn't Arteta give a start to KT against Fulham? We've kind of discussed that. If Arteta knows that Martinelli isn't a touchline winger. We'll deal with the second part, certainly. I think where I'm at with Martinelli, I think we'll chat after. We definitely need to do the scouted. I think where I'm at with him is, I think your comparison about Suarez never goes away. And I think if I hadn't seen him in 22-23 and I was watching him now, and someone said to me, "Oh, that's a striker playing out wide," I go, "All right." Martinelli is brilliant. He's a brilliant footballer, and in the right team, I look at like a Brighton or a Brentford. If he was playing centre forward, everyone in the world would want him. I'm telling you, like his striking instincts, his movement in the box is brilliant. But in a system where you have a Raumdeuter, whatever it's called, space creating centre forward, and you have your left winger so isolated and put out there, you have to have a profile. I'm not blaming Martinelli. You have to have a profile that can make that, what Jadon Sancho did yesterday in that Chelsea game, that out-to-in run that can devastate teams. Martinelli is brilliant in many aspects of his game. That is not his game. It just isn't. And therefore, I'm left wanting in that position. I don't think Trossard's the answer either. And then we're looking back to the market and stuff. But yeah, we've covered this many times. But I suppose, weirdly, I sort of went through a period, as you know, of kind of going through like frustration at Martinelli. And I still am in certain things that he's doing. But I think I've landed on a side of not actually the stuff that we talk about with more support. I think I'm now landing fully at misprofiling. And it's I don't actually want to give him necessarily more support. I want to look at the right profile to go there. And then what you do with Martinelli, I don't know. But I just think in this team, with how right-sided biased we are, how isolated Martinelli is, if you don't have someone who can devastate from out to in, from 5 to 4, from 5 to 3, or the central lane, it's not worth talking about the players. You have to look at the coach.
I think where I'm at is I try to say, okay, if I've got 10 apples in my bag and I'm carrying,
I have a metaphor today, aren't you?
I am
big metaphor boy today.
Seriously. But if
it's the illness.
Yeah, it is. If I've got 10 apples in my bag and I'm carrying 8 on my right hand and I've got 2 with my left, okay? And I've got a stronger plastic bag to deal with the 8 apples on my right hand, but I've got a less strong bag. Do I blame the bag for dropping the 2 apples, or do I blame the fact that I've got 8 freaking apples on my right hand side and I could split the load between the 2? And now I've got some free extra strength to maybe open the car door with one of them. And I'm not sitting there imbalanced. I'm kind of at the case of, if you don't want Martinelli and you want a different profile there, no problem. But that profile will still face the number of chances, and at maximum will improve on 1 to 2 chances a game, which is still 1 to 2 goals a game. Whereas I would like to see us get to a point where both sides of our pitch are effectively creating 4 to 5 chances a match. And that way, if something fails, because it can happen on the day, that one person, one side is not performing or being clinical, it can happen to anybody, even your Leaos, even your Mbappes, your Bukayo Saka's. Bukayo Saka's not, even though it seems like it, and he's been doing it at a crazy rate, there's going to be games that he's just not going to be able to do it. And that's fine. That's every person in the world. And I just think that when you're a team that also lacks the amount of apples or lacks the amount of chances created in open play in general, and everybody else is making a little bit more, carrying a little bit more, I don't want us to just get stronger bags. I want us to be able to carry more apples. And that's kind of where I'm at with it. Because also I will say, if we're doing what you're saying and there's 0 chance, which by the way, I don't know why we're saying that we can't change the system, but if we're there and we cannot change the system, then yeah, I don't want Martinelli to stay with us, because that's not fair. I mean, again, if I was doing the same to Kai Havertz, to Bukayo Saka or anybody else, and you're just not using them well, of course they're not going to be performing well. But I mean, also I could even retort with, okay, Declan Rice, we see what's limited as an 8 in those situations. Do we just tell Declan Rice to fix himself and just try to become a better 8? Or do we say, no, like, I want to get him back as a 6. I want to move him back. And that decision about do you platform one player or another comes down to how much you believe in the player's potential, ultimately, doesn't it?
Yeah, I think so. And who's available in the market, I guess. I think for me, my argument at the moment is leaning towards moving the left winger on, because I use the word left winger, not Martinelli. I'm using that on purpose, because I think getting someone who can create that out to in run is so important, and that ability to go both ways and beat your man, and then that player won't have the qualities of maybe Martinelli in the box and be less wasteful, but he'll get more chances, but whatever. But regardless, I think with that player able to create the space for themselves, I think it will take the demands off the fullback, the left central midfielder, and I think it will help the 9 as well. I think that feels like fixing one thing rather than fixing 3 things. But the market may dictate it. I don't know. Just to give some numbers to what we've been talking about, Arsenal's attack has become increasingly right-sided the past 3 seasons. So this is percentage of Arsenal's attacks in the Premier League. So in 22-23, the left side had 34% of our attacks. Season after, it was 33%. And this season, we're at 31%. And the right side has gone from 38 up to 41% last season, and is now at 45%. And you've got to consider where they've been taking away from. And that's taking away from. I don't know why I phrased it like that. Taking away from, the centre is losing a little bit as well. But yeah, I think a lot of this comes down to the market, because the thing is the player I'm describing, I don't have a name. Do you know what I mean? I'm describing a player that I can't tell you in the market. That the closest I have is like a Leao in terms of the burst and the separation he can do. But whether you can do that deal is a very different conversation. And it looks like, the Šeškos, the Osmans, the Jokerezes, there feels like more like a deal to be done there. And then you move around and then maybe you have a different conversation about the fullback. I don't know. But so I think the market will dictate it. But either way, I don't think anyone's denying anymore that the left-hand side isn't functioning. It's not working.
I think where I'm at with it is personally, like, even if you were to buy a Leao for me, my point has always been you still have lost in other areas. Like, you still have to support it and buy to supplement it, because Leao won't do the defensive work rate that we ask of our fullbacks. So you have to set up in a very different way. It actually demands a difference in the midfield as well. It will demand a difference in the striker in terms of how we're able to platform that striker as well. So if you do that, it creates change elsewhere. And I think that's going to be the case with whatever big attacker that you do. It's not just Leao. Say you got Victor Osimhen, by the way. Martinelli is not somebody that's going to suddenly thrive with Victor Osimhen. There'll be things that he helps, but then you absolutely need to change the left-hand side in terms of the fullback, in terms of that demand, as well as the midfield to help a Victor Osimhen. So I think where I'm at is these things are interconnected because we're talking about a team. We're not talking about individuals, even though everybody wants to talk individuals. It's about a cohesive unit and partnerships and units and how that makes and how that forms. Yeah. I think...
No, absolutely. But I just think a player who can jump in off that side in the way that Martinelli just doesn't, and that's fine, I think that reduces the strain a little bit on a Rice and the fullback, so you can be a little bit more conservative with them and make up for the defensive deficiencies a little bit. And also, I think this idea that Leao is you don't play professional football for AC Milan if you're lazy. You're not lazy, but obviously there are, he is ultimately late to his marker at times, and he is, I think he can be a little bit of a passenger, but that can change as well. There can be an uptick in that as well from his perspective. So I know that's just him, and that's a whole different conversation. But
I just think how you talk about like Havertz as a wrong doubter.
Whatever it is.
It's so if you look at his movement in general, like Havertz as a striker, and then compare him to a Haaland, compare him to other strikers, it comes with a different movement, I guess is my point. And if we're just saying that an out to in run is the only thing that's missing, I think it's a little bit different, because even if I was to find somebody that gave me that, I still would have a lot of the same issues that I'm having, even in terms of Fulham, because he's a right footer as well. I think we would have a qualitative difference. So you're looking at 1v1, there's going to be a better instance of maybe him having success in an isolated moment. Do I think that leads to more goals? I think it leads to more goals in one sense, but then maybe I concede more goals in another sense. And it's about saying, what do you think is the best way to win games? And I'm open to that being a type of Leao. But the one thing that I just feel like we do need, whether it's Leao or not, is I do want a better support system there, because for as much as profile differences will give you different ways of playing, I don't think that the way Arsenal attack being so predictable makes sense. Like, if I was to continue, even if I had Leao, I wouldn't want 45% of our attacks to come from the right-hand side and to continue increasing per season, essentially.
Yeah. No, yeah, whatever striker we sign, whatever left winger, whatever manager we have, that's not sustainable.
Yeah.
So that has to
and
change.
It's getting worse,
how we support
essentially,
that.
too.
And it is, objectively. Let's go to Spanish Alex 85 on the Discord. Hola. Why do you think Arteta went back on his comments earlier I'm sorry, I have to work with George, it's horrible, in the season about moving too many players about in a team when it came to our game at the weekend? He actually said that to James from the Gooniverse. For me, that's the main reason why we didn't win the game. Too many moving parts. Timber left back, Partey right back, and Jorginho in, rather than keeping Timber and Partey where they were and just playing a left-footed left back. We kind of discussed that, but it is funny because he has said that. He's literally said to my friend, the reason I did it is to not move around so many parts. So he does know, and this, I don't want to go back over it, but this just, he does know, and this is always the tricky thing with analysis, just in general, isn't it, mate? Like, I do genuinely believe like Mikel Arteta is like I've said this before, but like, okay, let's say I think like 2 billion people watched the World Cup final or something like that. Out of those people, if you believe in geniuses, wouldn't you say the guy who was this assistant to the greatest manager of all time, who nearly became the youngest manager to ever win the Premier League, who's been called at 30 for like tactical advice from the greatest manager of all time, or one of the greatest managers, wouldn't you say he's like in the conversation at least? Out of that many people who are involved in football. If you were going to say a football genius, he must be up there, right? So I do genuinely think he's extremely special. And a lot of people in the Premier League are special. I'm not saying he's the only person, but he is special. Then how do you reckon with that? Because he does know on some level. He must do. Like, I don't delude myself into thinking we're saying something they're not talking about in the coaching circles. So, yeah, I don't know how to reckon with that.
I think it makes it more frustrating as a fan because you almost hope it's ignorance.
Yeah.
Like, if you can't spot it, it's like, oh, he has to learn it.
Yeah.
He will learn it, but he knows it. And
I'll do your metaphor again. Yeah, it's like when someone's doing something and you're like, I've told you not to do that, and you're now doing it again. I think you are doing it to annoy me now. And that's worse.
Yeah.
It's worse than the first time.
Oh, 100%. Yeah. And I know. But I also equally think, mate, like, we're also in this scenario because we're not doing well as a team. And you isolate that from any manager, and any manager does things that you feel are so obvious. And it's because, we're a fan ultimately. And by the way, we're flawed. Every team is flawed. Every coach is flawed. There's not been a coach ever that was perfect. And funnily enough, he's very young. And for as great as he is, there's a lot of, I think, some social things that he may have to learn in terms of personalities. Like, I think his biggest point of improvement has been the empathy portion and the soft factor portion, because I don't think football wise you're going to teach Mikel Arteta anything that he doesn't already know to a very high level. And I think sometimes some of this balance thing gets lost because there's two types of managers, in my opinion. You have Carlo Ancelotti and you've got Pep. Both incredibly successful managers, but very different managers. There's the man manager who understands complementary pairs and balance. And then there is the thinker, the meme, the somebody that is, caught in the weeds of the details. And they're just opposites of the same coin, which is a successful freaking manager. And I just think that Mikel has things to improve, but mate, I hate to do this, but I mean, Pep, has he really solved the middle third compactness in the last month without Rodri? No. Arne Slot, by the way, has he solved the fact that he's been unable to track runners either side, which is what undid him at Newcastle? No. Another couple of results like that, and the lead going from 7 or 9 points down to 1 or 3, will be asking the same questions, and everybody will be there. It's just our turn to be there because we just haven't had the results that we needed. And so we're sitting there saying, this is a person who can't learn. This is a person who, despite being one of the youngest managers in the world, can't evolve.
And
it's not the case.
Can't evolve. No, I agree. And I think you bring up a great point. And it's the ultimate argument of order versus chaos in every life, in every situation. It's the two polars, salt and pepper, love, fear. It's always that. And I think with Mikel, if you put it on the order chaos axis, he's always been slightly on the order side, and I've always been inviting him to just step into the chaos just that touch more. And I do believe at this point it has to be a bit of a personality thing, because you feel it, don't you? You just see it. He's obviously a very organised, very diligent, very capable, hard-working dude. And that is great. But sometimes you ever meet those people and you're like, you're great, but you know what you need? You need a joint. Like, that would sort you out. You are great at but you just need to like go on a 6-week bender, and then you'd be fine. And all it would do is knock you just one notch along the path, and you'd be set. And that's what it is. I just feel, I'm not saying you need a joint, but I'm just saying,
I've got like something weird as a question, and I don't know if you feel, but can you name me a title-winning team that didn't have a player that wasn't outspoken, or that was a major personality that didn't argue with the manager at some point or create some kind of riff. And I genuinely can't. And I'm looking at this team and I'm like, I don't know if I see somebody that does that. And it's kind of why
and do you know what,
I lean to the Osimhen idea. Not even just the name, but getting somebody that can challenge Mikel. Because you need somebody that has that respect. And I'm looking at Henry. By the way, Henry wasn't nice. Wasn't a nice person to deal with. You have that in your team. You're saying, F you, like, I hate you. Michael Jordan wasn't nice. A lot of people didn't like him. But the reason why he's great and he's elite, by the way, is because he's able to pull people and bring you into that direction and forces you to become a little bit of a killer, forces you to be a little bit like him. And if you're not, you're isolated and you're kicked out. And I just feel that we maybe need a little bit more of that friction, just ultimately, because I can't remember a team, a title-winning team, even in Pep's greatest teams. Like, I look at Kevin De Bruyne, he's not nice. He's outspoken.
Company.
Holland, he's quite humble, isn't he, in the last month? But,
very humble.
Yes.
Too humble.
But I mean, I don't know, even Bonnet with Klopp, Salah with Klopp, like...
Yeah. Salah fought Klopp.
Salah is fighting the club down with Arne Slot. I don't know.
Yeah, it's a brilliant point, and you could look even further back, and Mourinho has always fallen out with players and stuff, and you do need a bit of bite. Yeah, I don't know. I suppose what it is contextually when he came in, we were so far down that path and bad that we absolutely needed. We needed a dad. Yeah. We needed a paternal figure. Yeah, a paternal figure to come in and be like, right, you're going to bed at this time. You're doing this or whatever. But at some point, do you ever see Super Nanny? Do you have that? Do you have that in Canada?
We don't have it, but I've seen it.
What happens is what she does. She comes in. She sets all the rules, right? And then there's all this tension and friction. And then the kids are like, "We love you, Super Nanny. Thank you so much." And then at the very end, towards the end, they slightly relax. You might see them like have a hug, or they might have like a moment where the kids like push the rules a little bit because they do need to, but it's okay because you've like reset the balance. I feel we're still in the bit where the rules are very clear and they haven't quite had the hug. That's such a niche metaphor, but if anyone gets that, you know what I mean. I'll do another one. But yeah, we so needed to set our house in order. We so needed to deal with the leaks and the Aubameyangs and the lateness and the Mustafis and the stuff I was hearing. Like I could share now. Like, I know someone pretty close to Mustafi. Apparently, he was horrible. So there was some pretty bad stuff going on at the club, and now it's just eked that just touch too far away. And I look at like a Saka. Is he the guy? But again, when you've known someone for so long,
I think
from
Saliba
being a child, it's very hard to challenge them. It's really hard.
Yeah, and I mean somebody that you've also like. Saliba is somebody that could do, but we're talking about such young people. Do you know what I mean? Like, I want a man to come in that has already been there and done it, kind of thing. And I even look back, like, what made even the Chelsea team reform with Diego Costa and Cesc Fabregas? Like, okay, yes, they got a bully and they got a really top player and a top striker, but they got a nasty, experienced killer in. And I just look at our front line and I maintain, like, I've had conversations with other fans of other teams, like some Bayern followers and stuff on X. And I say, like, consistently, like, are you afraid of the Arsenal front line? And they go, well, I mean, I'm afraid of Saka, but beyond that, no. And it's come from enough people that I'm sat there saying, well, that's not okay, even if I disagree with your opinion. And we can have debates about individuals. If collectively people are saying, well, yeah, no, Saka's dangerous, but if we can clamp that, we can clamp you guys, that's a problem to me.
I mean, Tuchel literally said that. So, yeah, I think, and I also, I suppose just socially, like, to challenge someone, in this context, I suppose you either need to be on their level football-wise, which is very intellectually, which is very hard, or you need to be on their level importance-wise. And I don't know whether, Saliba and Saka are becoming that, but it still feels like it's his club. It is a concern, and I hope he's intelligent, emotionally intelligent enough to kind of know that, Because I think people who are emotionally intelligent do recognise like, oh, I'm not really being challenged here, and I want that. I'm sure he does know, but doing it is a different thing. Let's come to a question on X, the beautiful website that is X. Can I just say something very quickly about X? I hate social media wars, George, but I want to come to it. I've never known a fan base like Liverpool. It's unbelievable. I talk about every single club on that website. I talk about Chelsea, I talk about Spurs, Newcastle, I slag players off, I praise players, I'll say this player's great, whatever. I'll talk about everyone. Only Liverpool, I guarantee you, if I say one of their players, even I said Firmino earlier, not even a current player, 200 quote tweets. They're insane. What do you do? What, you just sit all day searching Liverpool and your players?
Oh, mate.
I don't get it. It's absolutely bizarre, but I'm talking to the king of the Twitter argument. So
I'm a peaceful man now that I'm sick. I haven't been on.
You haven't been arguing. Let's come to someone X. Here we go. We've sort of covered quite a few of these. So Etienne, this is a good question. Why are we not seeing more of Mikel Merino in the left eight? I didn't expect a 28-year-old to be a slow cook signing. It's a very good point. I think he's really helped with balance and getting more left footers on that side.
Yeah, your guess is as good as mine at this point, because there was a lot of maybe injury questions, and then it got to a point of like, do you understand the pressing triggers? And then now it's kind of a point of, okay, that was your big midfield signing, somebody that you really pined for. That was somebody, by the way, who's had a previous relationship with Martin Odegaard. So this idea of chemistry I find really difficult to understand. You can already see that they have a connection. They find each other on the pitch. He looks to be a goal threat in every single cameo that he's been in. It's not even just about knitting things together. I think he's added a significant goal threat to our team whenever he's employed. And honestly, mate, I feel like he's a consequence of other things. It's the debate between, I don't want to get away from it, but Thomas Partey and his form and what you do with that. And I think that's what's struggling with, Mikel. Like if Partey for him didn't start as well, this would have been a much faster transition. And I even think if he had had a preseason where everybody was on the same level playing field, he would have started a lot sooner. And I think fundamentally he's really struggling with the form of Thomas Partey, who may be having an individually a very good season, but in terms of team balance wise, is something that he can't fit all three in, which is ironic because then he sits there and he plays Thomas Partey, Declan Rice, Jorginho. And so I don't have a logic for why I'm not seeing more. I think he fixes things. We said it so many times in this podcast. And I just think he's a player that we really need to integrate if we want to be successful this season, to be honest with you. He's a very important player, and he fixes a lot of things that this midfield struggles with. So I hope we see him soon. I don't really have an answer why he's not been seen other than injury and things like that, because he had a cameo in United, but he was completely out of the squad the previous game. So
yeah, there was a rumor that
is he physically there? I don't know, but I'm also just saying I don't believe you, Mikel, and I think you need to start trust the lieutenant that you really pined for. Really,
I'm sure someone could do the numbers on this. I can't remember him coming on and us getting worse. Do you know what I mean? No. I feel like almost every time he comes on, because it's usually second half, we look better. I remember PSG, I think when he came on for his debut, we just looked better immediately.
His first initial minutes, he was definitely slow. But, I mean, again, it was his first 3 or 4 games in a shirt with less than 60 minutes collectively. So, nothing serious.
Yeah. Question from @JGen_P. Catchy. Would you swap Milan's left-hand side of Theo Hernandez, Tijani, I don't know who that is, and Leao? This is how much of a casual I am outside of Arsenal, guys. For Arsenal's left-hand side of Calafiori, Marino, and Martinelli. I feel like I should defer to you on that because I don't know who Tijani is.
Well, no, of course.
I like Theo Hernandez.
Yeah. It's Reniers. He's one of the CM at Milan that's had a really good time.
Oh, I've heard of him.
Well, no, of course. I mean, I think this is a really loaded question. You're talking about Leao, who's probably one of the best left wingers in the world, and Teo Hernandez, who's one of the best left backs in the world, like certainly top two. So yeah, like those two alone, you'd want to swap. But in terms of like the collective balance, we haven't seen Calafiori, Marino, and Martinelli. Like I actually haven't seen a 90 minutes with them, and I'm willing to say I think that explodes. You give me 5 90s of that, I'm willing to put my you know what on the line and say that I think that Martinelli comes back to his 22-23 form. So if that's the debate versus this current version of Leao, who by the way is also similarly not performing amazing. If you actually look at the Milan season, it's only recently that he's really come into form in the last 2 to 3 weeks. Then it's a question. But yeah, we just haven't seen the one, and the latter has been there, done that. Like Teo Hernandez and Leao have been a partnership for the last 3-4 years. That's been probably one of the most devastating in world football.
Yeah, I think that's another because obviously we analyze everything so granularly. I think granularly. I think it's another thing that we kind of underrate is Saka Ødegaard. That partnership has been around for what is that? It must be 3 years, over 3 years now. Mm-hmm. Like, okay, yeah, they have a brilliant connection, but it's formed for it's taken a long time to get to this point. And they, obviously like each other off the pitch and stuff. So yeah, that chemistry and getting it there. And maybe we can close the pod on this actually. It does feel like, I don't actually have the numbers on this. I did see something that was like suggesting that Arsenal had the most injuries in the league. I don't know if it's true or not, so don't quote me on that. But there's some good data out there suggesting that Arsenal are at least high up the league on injuries. What do you put it down to? Can we just put it down to the schedule? Can we do better with it? Help. It's so annoying.
The players that we've needed to step up weren't fit. I look at Tomiyasu and some of the depth pieces, they weren't fit, so we've had to rely. Jesus, Sterling. Your depth pieces haven't stepped up, and so it's forced you to overplay people. I think Calafiori's been a little bit unlucky in terms of some of his injuries there. That's something that you can maybe question in terms of how we're using him.
Say what you think.
And I mean, I don't know. Some of that I think is him wanting a whine a little bit. But I mean, like the Mikel Merino dislocation, like when does that happen in football, period? Yeah. So that's incredibly unlucky. Ben White, that's on us. That is on us.
Yeah.
I don't buy this idea that he couldn't have done it in the summer, but that's on us. And you knew Timber coming off an ACL should not have had this amount of minutes anyways, but he's also been in and out. No. So yeah, Tommy, that's on. And then Tommy, I don't know. That's a perennial question.
Was it? I'm not even sure he's at the club. I think he's gone somewhere else.
Yeah, and I
don't know what's.
Look, I feel bad, mate, because I feel it sounds like there's some mental health issues there, and I don't want to be ignorant to him. But at some point, it's like, okay, you are a part of the team, and we've drastically needed it. We've needed you, and so a lot of this has gone because of that. I think Gabriel. It's been in and out. Jesus, I don't know why he was injured to start off with. He had a full preseason without anything in there, but some of this stuff is...
Please don't talk about that, man. Please let's not
There's a lot of things that I think we haven't helped with, but also similarly, there's some players that need to step up, just fundamentally. And our depth hasn't stepped up enough.
I'd agree with that, and that's why we're getting Ethan Waneri left wing shouts. I'd broadly agree with that. I think probably it's the tone of the pod, really, isn't it? It just feels like things aren't going our way. And let's finish on this, because I think I've seen a few sort of debates and stuff about excuses or whatever, and it's really hard, I suppose, in the analytic space to hold two things to be true. One, that there are apps and sort of know how much of each to sort of weight and how much to sort of put across. On the one hand, as we discussed a lot, there are things that we can do, both in profile and approach and coaching and tactics that we can control. But I can't help but feel so much of this season there are excuses. There are things that have happened to us that feel really unfair. That I'm sorry. Any team with 3 senior defenders available for 20 minutes at the end of that Liverpool game against the all-time potential Premier League right back and probably the all-time potential Premier League right winger, you're gonna struggle. If you look at we're not sat here having these conversations. If again, and by the way, we didn't discuss this. We're not getting into the conspiracy conversation, but treated differently in terms of what happened. The delay in the restart rule has just gone, and Chris Kavanagh just was the same dude. So I don't understand that at all, and we bore the brunt of that. I don't understand that. I really don't understand that, and it just feels like anything that kind of. I mean, I don't want to do the whole poor me, but it does feel like anything that has gone wrong, or anything that can go wrong, has gone wrong to some degree. I hope what that means is in the second half of this season, our luck evens out. And by the way, we're only 6 points behind, even when that stuff has happened. So to some degree, there's a degree of positivity there. But yeah, sort of closing on this, but to sum up the whole pod, it just feels like we're so close, and it makes it even more frustrating that these things are kind of happening.
I just think that at this moment in time, we need to focus on getting ourselves right, fixing ourselves, and the outcomes in terms of the title race and every conversation that everybody wants to have needs to be parked until it's relevant in March. And that would be something that I would say, even if Arsenal were performing well, like, when I have a look at like our barnstorming start, to 22-23 and how we fell off in the second half of the season, none of that mattered because of our play into the second half of the season. So for me, get yourself to March, get yourself to competing until that point, and then play what's in front of you. Then we have a different conversation. There's 2 more seasons left. There's now Christmas until March, and then from March to the end of the season. And I think it's really important that we've underperformed in this first half of the season, whether it's our fault or not. I don't know how much you want to attribute it to, but fundamentally we're underperforming points-wise. We need to change our tide and make our own luck. And that's part of what I'm going to be demanding in the future, and that's part of January. That's part of how we adapt. That's part of Mikel changing some things in terms of some of his lineups. That's part of the players accepting a little bit more responsibility in terms of maximizing your transition moments. I mean, there's blame that's laid at the feet of everybody at the club. But let's make our own luck. Let's focus on our own lawn, and let's get to where we need to get to by March. After that, let's reevaluate what the distance is.
The grass is greener where you water it. And the best thing, George, is no matter how bad it gets, we're not Spurs. Tim Pot. It's just who we are, mate. Thank you, George.
Thank you, good sir.
Thank you all for being here. If you like the pod, make sure you subscribe. Like us on YouTube if you're listening on Spotify or Apple. Thanks for being there, and give us a review. Make sure you subscribe as well. We'll be back with a instant reaction in the week. We're going to have a chat now about our schedule this week, so I'll do this on the fly. But yeah, we'll be back with loads of content. So if you want ad-free stuff and exclusive stuff, then check out Patreon and YouTube memberships. Otherwise, we love having you here. Thanks for being here. Thanks for being here for our therapy session. And thanks, as always, for keeping it Arsenal.